The morning started like any other day on Research Station, Harmony 7. Located on the edge of human space, the small facility housed 23 children and their families. The children were between 6 and 12 years old. Their parents worked as scientists, engineers, and teachers studying new planets and space technology. Yoon Park was 8 years old and loved drawing pictures of the stars she could see from her bedroom window. Her father, Jin Ho Park, used to be a soldier, but now he worked as a security guard on a different station far away. Dae-yoon missed him, but she knew he was keeping other people safe. 10-year-old Tae-ho Lee was the smartest kid in his class. His mother, Hai-jin Lee, taught military strategy at the Earth Defense Academy before moving to the research station. Tae-ho could solve math problems that made adults scratch their heads. He also knew a lot about spaceships and how they worked. The research station was peaceful and quiet. Most days the children went to school in the morning and played in the recreation areas in the afternoon. The adults worked on their projects and everyone felt safe. The station had basic shields and a few small defense weapons, but nothing serious. Everyone thought they were too far from dangerous space to worry about attacks. That morning changed everything. The first sign of trouble came when 9-year-old Minho Chun noticed strange lights in the distance while eating breakfast. His father, Dong-woo Chun, was an engineer who taught Minho to pay attention to details. Minho ran to tell the adults, but they thought the lights were just cargo ships passing by. Minho knew something was wrong. The lights were moving in attack formation, just like his uncle had taught him when they played space battle games. His uncle was a pilot in the human fleet, and he always said that ships flying in triangle shapes meant trouble. Within an hour, the lights became huge dark ships. The Vorthek Empire had found the little research station. The Vorthek were insect-like aliens with hard shells and 6 arms. They had sharp claws and faces that looked like giant beetles. Their ships were black and covered with spikes that made them look scary, even from far away. The Vorthak commander was named Thex Korvac. He was 7 feet tall with glowing red eyes and mandibles that clicked when he talked. He had raided dozens of planets and stolen from many different alien species. Humans were new to the galaxy, and Thex thought they would be easy targets. The research station tried to send a distress signal, but the Vorthek ships jammed all communications. The station manager, Dr. Young-soo Kim, ordered everyone to hide in the emergency shelters. He hoped the Vorthek would take whatever they wanted and leave, but Thex had different plans. The Vorthek forces landed on the station with loud crashes that shook the walls. They broke through the main doors with energy weapons that melted metal like butter. The adults tried to protect the children, but they were not soldiers. They were teachers and scientists who knew about books and experiments. Not fighting, Thex walked through the station with his soldiers looking for valuable technology or rare materials. Instead, he found something he did not expect: children. The human children were not crying or running around like scared animals. Instead, they stayed close together and watched everything with bright, curious eyes. Dae-yoon held hands with her friend, so young, while they hid behind a desk. She remembered what her father taught her about staying calm when scared. Her father always said that smart people watch and learn, even when they are afraid. Dae-yoon decided to watch the alien soldiers and learn about them. Tae-ho was thinking about everything his mother taught him about enemy tactics. He noticed that the Vorthak soldiers always moved in groups of 3. He saw which weapons they carried and how they communicated with clicking sounds. He stored all this information in his memory for later. The Vorthak commander looked at the children with his big red eyes. He had seen many species before, but these small humans were different. They were not begging or screaming. They just watched him back with steady eyes that made him feel uncomfortable. Most young creatures became quiet and scared when adults were captured, but these children seemed to be studying him. Decided the children would make perfect hostages. Humans seemed to care about their young based on what he had heard in galactic communications. If he took the children, he could demand whatever he wanted from the human government. It seemed like an easy plan. The Vorthak soldiers gathered all 23 children into the main classroom. Yoon-ji Song who was 11 years old and very brave, stood up and asked why they were being taken. Vex clicked his mandibles and said they were going to visit his ship. The children understood this was not a choice, as the aliens prepared to move them. Whispered to Minho that they needed to remember everything about the ship. Minho nodded and told Tae-ho, who passed the message to the other children. Without making any noise, they agreed to work together and pay attention to everything they saw. The walk to the Vortex ship took 10 minutes. The children looked at every door, every hallway, and every guard they passed. They counted steps and memorized the route, so Young, who was very good at remembering things, made a mental map of the path from the station to the ship. Once aboard the enemy vessel, the children were put in a large holding area that looked like a cage. The walls were made of energy fields that glowed blue. The Vorthak guards thought the children would be scared and quiet. But they were wrong. Hyun-woo Kim was the human ambassador to the Galactic Council. He was attending a boring meeting about trade regulations when his communication device started flashing red. Emergency messages were coming in from human space. Something bad had happened at Research Station Harmony 7. The first reports were confusing. A Vorthak raiding party had attacked the station and taken something valuable. But when the full report came in, Hyun-woo felt his blood turn cold. The Vorthak had not taken technology or materials. They had taken 23 human children. Hyun-woo stood up in the middle of the council meeting. His face was pale and his hands were shaking. The alien representatives looked at him with curiosity. They had never seen the calm human ambassador look so disturbed. He asked for an emergency session of the full council. Within 2 hours, representatives from every major species in the galaxy gathered in the great crystal chamber. Hyun-woo stood at the speaking platform and told them what had happened. The Vorthak Empire had kidnapped human children. The aliens in the audience made various sounds of surprise, but they did not understand why this was so serious. What happened next shocked every alien present. Hyun-woo received another message on his device. As he read it, his expression changed from worry to something much darker. He looked up at the assembled council and spoke in a voice that was quiet but filled with danger. Every human military ship in known space was moving toward Vorthak territory. Civilian ships were being armed and joining the fleet. Retired soldiers were coming out of retirement. Families were sending their sons and daughters to help with the rescue. The entire human species was mobilizing for war. The alien council members had never seen anything like it. Most species would send diplomats to negotiate, or maybe a small military force to apply pressure. But the humans were not negotiating. They were not applying pressure. They were preparing to destroy an entire empire to get their children back. Ambassador Hyun-woo looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked confused, others looked frightened. A few looked impressed, but most just looked shocked. He cleared his throat and spoke the words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. He told them that the Vorthak Empire had made a mistake that could not be forgiven. They had threatened human children, and now they would face the consequences. He explained that humans had tried to be peaceful members of the galactic community, but there were some things that could never be allowed. The council chamber was completely silent. Every alien representative understood that they were witnessing something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The humans were not just angry, they were united in a way that transcended politics, borders, and individual interests. Their children had been taken, and nothing else mattered. As reports continued to come and the scope of the human response became clear, merchant ships were converting their cargo holds into troop transports. Mining vessels were mounting military weapons. Research ships were joining the fleet with scientists who wanted to help rescue the children. The message was clear to everyone watching. Humans would negotiate about almost anything, but they would go to war over their children. The Vorthak Empire was about to learn this lesson in the most painful way possible. Council leader Zephes had lived for 300 years and ruled over galactic politics for the last 50. She had seen wars between empires, watched species rise and fall, and mediated conflicts that lasted decades, but nothing had prepared her For what she was watching now on the tactical displays, human ships were arriving at the Vorthek border, faster than her computers could count them. The fleet was not just big, it was impossible. Every type of human vessel was joining the Armada military. Battleships flew next to school transport ships. Cargo haulers had been fitted with weapons that looked dangerous, even to experienced warriors, Captain. So Jin Choi commanded the human battleship Determination. She was a career military officer who had served in 3 different conflicts. Her ship was one of the first to reach Vorthek space, but she was not alone. Behind her came a fleet that made even the largest alien armadas look small. Strangest thing about the human fleet was how different all the ships were. Most species used standard military vessels when they went to war, but the humans had brought everything that could fly. Mining ships bristled with newly installed laser cannons. Passenger liners had been converted into troop transports. Even small personal craft had joined the fleet, carrying volunteers who wanted to help. What frightened the council most was not the size of the fleet, but how quiet it was. Usually when large military forces gathered, there were lots of communications. Ships talked to each other about strategy, supplies, and coordination. But the human fleet moved with silent purpose, as if every captain already knew exactly what to do. Dazafis watched Captain Choi send a single message to the Vorthek Empire. The message was only 15 words long, but it made every alien in the council chamber feel cold. Return our children unharmed within 12 hours, or we will take them back. The message was not a threat or a demand, it was simply a statement of fact. The Vorthek commander, Thex Korvac, received the message while sitting in his command chair aboard his flagship. He had been feeling proud of his successful raid. Now he felt worried. The human fleet outside his territory was much larger than anything in his intelligence reports. How had they gathered so many ships so quick? Lithex tried to contact the human fleet to negotiate. He sent messages offering to discuss terms for releasing the children. He suggested prisoner exchanges or tribute payments. But every message went unanswered. The humans were not interested in talking. They had already decided what they were going to do back on Earth and human colonies throughout the galaxy. Something unprecedented was happening. Families were sending their savings to help fund the rescue mission. Retired soldiers were coming out of retirement to join the fleet. Civilian engineers were working around the clock to convert merchant ships into warships. Ki Young Han was the human representative who usually spoke for his people in peaceful negotiations. He was known throughout the galaxy as a reasonable man who preferred talking to fighting. Now he stood before the emergency council session with tears in his eyes, but his voice was steady and strong. The alien council members asked Ki Young if there was any way to resolve the situation through diplomacy. They suggested prisoner exchanges, economic compensation, or territorial concessions. Ki Young listened to all their suggestions, then shook his head slowly. He told them that humans would negotiate about almost anything. They would discuss trade deals, territorial disputes, and resource sharing. They would compromise on political issues and work together to solve problems. But there were some things that could never be negotiated. When someone threatened human children, all negotiations stopped. There was no middle ground, no room for compromise, no possibility of finding a peaceful solution. The children would be returned safely, or the Vorthek Empire would be destroyed. There were no other options. The alien representative struggled to understand this concept. Most species valued their young, but they also understood the practical limits of military action. They knew when to cut losses and accept partial solutions. But the humans seemed to have no concept of acceptable losses when children were involved. Admiral Seung Ho Park was Ki Young Han's brother and commanded the human deep space fleet. He had been attending a military conference on the other side of the galaxy when he received word about the kidnapping. Within hours he had commandeered every available ship and was racing toward Vorthek territory. Admiral's fleet included some of the most advanced warships in human space. But he was not just bringing military vessels. Civilian captains had volunteered their ships and crews for the rescue mission. Teachers had taken leave from their jobs to serve as communications officers. Parents had left their own children with relatives to help rescue someone else's children. Amazed the galactic observers was how quickly the humans had organized such a massive response. Most species needed weeks or months to coordinate large military operations. The humans had mobilized their entire civilization in less than 3 days. The human fleet now numbered over 2,000 ships of all sizes and types. Scout vessels darted between the larger ships, carrying messages and intelligence, massive cargo. Haulers had been converted into mobile command centers. Hospital ships stood ready to treat any injured children. Engineering vessels carried specialized equipment for boarding operations. Hae-Won Lee was aboard one of the hospital ships. She was a pediatric specialist who had volunteered to join the fleet. Her own daughter was safe on Earth, but she could not bear the thought of human children being held prisoner by aliens. She brought medical supplies and toys to help comfort the rescued children. The Vorthak military leaders were starting to panic. Their intelligence had suggested that humans were peaceful and preferred diplomatic solutions. The massive fleet gathering outside their territory told a very different story. These humans looked ready to fight a war that would destroy both civilization. Korvuk tried one more time to contact the human fleet. He sent a message directly to Captain Choi, offering to release half the children immediately in exchange for the humans withdrawing their fleet. The response came back within minutes, a single word: no. The human fleet had taken position at the edge of Vorthak space, but they were not attacking. Instead, they waited with the patience of predators watching their prey. The tactical displays showed human ships in perfect formation, ready to strike, but holding back for some reason. Council leader Zephes realized what the humans were doing. They were not hesitating or planning strategy. They were giving the Vorthak one last chance to return the children voluntarily. After 12 hours they would stop being patient and start being dangerous. The alien council members sent desperate messages to both sides, begging them to negotiate. The humans ignored the messages completely. The Vorthak sent replies asking for council intervention, but their messages sounded increasingly frightened as the 12-hour deadline approached. More human ships continued to arrive. The fleet had grown to over 3,000 vessels. Captain Choi sent one final message to the Vorthak flagship: your time is up. Return our children now, or face the consequences. Response from Dex Korvak was angry and defiant. He told the humans that he would not be intimidated by their show of force. He demanded that they withdraw immediately, or he would harm the human children. The Vorthak commander had just made the last mistake of his life. Captain Choi received the message and felt something cold settle in her chest. She had served in the military for 20 years and had seen many battles, but threatening to harm human children crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The Vorthak had sealed their fate. She opened a communication channel to every ship in the human fleet. Her voice was calm and steady as she gave the order that would echo through galactic history: all ships prepare for combat operations. We are going to bring our children home. The fleet responded with a roar of engines as 3,000 human ships prepared to show the galaxy what happened to those who threatened their young. The aliens watching from the council chambers knew they were about to witness something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The humans had tried diplomacy and been rejected. Now they would try something else entirely. While the human fleet prepared for battle, something unexpected was happening aboard the Vorthak flagship. The children were not behaving like typical prisoners. Most alien species when captured became quiet and scared, waiting for rescue or accepting their fate. But human children were different, very different. Ayun Park had been watching the Vorthak guards for 2 full days. She noticed that they changed shifts every 6 hours. She saw which corridors they used most often and which areas they avoided. She even figured out some of their hand signals by watching them communicate. The 8-year-old was gathering intelligence like a trained spyman. Ho-chun was fascinated by the alien technology. His engineer father had taught him to understand how machines worked. The 9-year-old spent hours studying the energy field that kept them prisoner. He asked innocent questions to the guards about how their equipment functioned. The Vorthok thought he was just a curious child. But Minho was learning about their weaknesses. Tae-ho Lee had inherited his mother's strategic mind. The 10-year-old was organizing the other children without the guards noticing. He created a system of hand signals and whispers that let them share information. He assigned different children to watch different things so they could learn as much as possible about their captors. The Vorthok guards were becoming uncomfortable with their prisoners. Most species they had captured before either cried constantly or sat in silent despair, but these human children seemed to be studying them. The guards felt like they were the ones being watched and judged on. Ji-song was 11 and the oldest of the group. She had taken charge of keeping the younger children calm and focused when 6-year-old Ji-woo started crying because he missed his parents. Yoon-ji held him and told him stories about brave heroes who always rescued children. She made sure everyone ate their food and got enough sleep. The children had developed a routine that looked like normal childhood activities, but was actually sophisticated intelligence gathering. They played games that involved memorizing guard schedules. They told stories that were really coded messages about what they had observed. They even sang songs that helped them remember important information about the ship. What disturbed the Vorthok most was the children's absolute confidence that they would be rescued. Most prisoners eventually accepted that they might not survive or see their families again, but these human children never showed any doubt. They spoke about their rescue as if it was guaranteed to happen. Young, who had an amazing memory for details, had mapped the entire route from their cell to the command center. She could describe every turn, every door, and every guard post along the way. She shared this information with the other children through their secret communication system. The Vorthok commander, Vex Korvac, visited the prisoners to intimidate them. He stood outside their energy cage with his 6 arms crossed and his red eyes glowing. He clicked his mandibles in a threatening way that usually made other species tremble with fear, but the human children just stared back at him with steady eyes that showed no fear. Yoon even asked him why he had taken them from their families. Vex tried to explain that they were valuable prisoners who would help him get what he wanted from the human government. Tae-ho looked at the alien commander and said something that made Vex feel cold inside. The 10-year-old told him that taking human children was the biggest mistake anyone could make. He said that humans would do anything to protect their young, and that the Vorthok fleet was going to be destroyed. Vex laughed and told the children that his empire was strong and his ships were powerful. But Minho pointed to the energy readings on a nearby display panel and said the human fleet outside was much bigger than anything the Vorthok had ever faced. The 9-year-old had been reading their instruments and understood what the numbers meant. The alien guards reported to their commander that the human children were behaving strangely. They were not broken or defeated like normal prisoners. Instead, they seemed to be preparing for something. They shared information, they planned activities, and they watched everything with intelligent eyes. What the Vorthok did not understand was that human children learn differently than other species. While alien young were taught to obey authority and accept their situation, human children were encouraged to think for themselves, to question everything, and to never give up. Hope. The children had also been learning about their captors' weaknesses. The Vorthok guards were overconfident because they had never dealt with human prisoners before. They talked freely in front of the children, assuming that young ones could not understand military matters. They were wrong. Yoon had figured out that the guards were afraid of their own commander. She saw how they acted nervous when Vex was around and how they relaxed when he left. She realized that the Vorthok military was based on fear and intimidation rather than loyalty and teamwork. Minho discovered that the ship's systems were not as secure as they appeared. The energy field holding them had manual override controls that could be accessed if someone knew where to look. He had watched the guards operate the controls and memorized the sequence. The children began to prepare for their opportunity. They knew their parents and the human fleet were coming. They could feel the ship's engines working harder and hear the crew moving around more frantically. The Vorthok were getting ready for battle, which meant rescue as Closey and G organized the children into teams. Each team had a specific job when the rescue operation began. Some would help younger children stay safe. Others would disable guard equipment if possible. A few would secure the area and make sure no one got left behind. The most important thing the children learned was that the Vorthek were not as powerful as they pretended to be. The alien guards were nervous about the human fleet. They talked about how quickly the humans had assembled their forces and how many ships they had brought. Young Ji Woo, who was only 6 years old, surprised everyone by remembering conversations between guards that revealed important information about ship defenses. He had been listening carefully and understood more than the adults realized. His innocent questions had made the guards reveal critical details. As the hours passed, the children could sense that something big was about to happen. Ships' alarm systems were being tested more frequently. Guard patrols had increased, and the Vorthak crew seemed anxious about something. The children knew their rescue was coming. Soon Tae-ho gathered everyone together and reminded them of the plan. They would stay calm and work together. When the human forces arrived, they would be ready to help with their own rescue. They would not be helpless victims waiting to be saved. They would be active participants in their liberation. The Vorthak had made a terrible mistake when they captured human children. They thought they were taking weak, helpless prisoners who would make their parents desperate enough to surrender. But they had actually taken intelligent, resourceful individuals who were preparing to fight back. As the human fleet moved into attack position, the children aboard the Vorthak flagship were ready. They had spent their time in captivity learning about their enemies, gathering intelligence, and preparing for the moment when their families would come to take them home. The galaxy was about to learn that human children were not just smaller versions of adults. They were individuals with their own courage, intelligence, and determination. When threatened, they did not break or surrender. They adapted, planned, and prepared to survive. The human assault began exactly 12 hours after Captain So-jin Choi's final warning. The attack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Instead of charging in with overwhelming firepower, the human fleet moved with surgical precision that left every observer stunned. Captain Choi did not order her ships to destroy the Vorthak flagship where the children were held. Instead, she commanded her fleet to systematically disable every other enemy vessel in the area, one by one. Vorthak warships found their engines dead, their weapons offline, and their life support systems failing. The alien council members watching from their emergency session could not believe what they were seeing. The humans were fighting a battle while protecting their enemies. The precision required to disable ships without destroying them was beyond what most species thought possible. Commander Jae-min Park led the boarding parties that would rescue the children. He was a special forces officer who had trained for exactly this type of mission, but he was not alone. Every soldier, volunteer, and crew member in his force had one thing in common: they all had children of their own. Human boarding ships approached the Vorthak flagship from 17 different directions at exactly the same time. The attack was coordinated so perfectly that it looked like a choreographed dance. Each boarding craft knew exactly where to strike and when to move. The Vorthak defenders tried to repel the human assault, but they quickly discovered they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. These were not just soldiers following orders. These were parents, teachers, siblings, and neighbors who had volunteered for a mission that would either save the children or die trying. The ferocity of the human attack was matched only by their discipline. Every human fighter knew that one wrong move could endanger the children they were trying to save. They fought with controlled fury that was more terrifying than mindless rage. As the human forces carved through the ship's defenses, they discovered something that amazed even their own commanders. The children had not been sitting quietly waiting for rescue. They had been actively preparing for this moment. Yoon Park had used her father's training to organize the other children into defensive positions. When the first explosions echoed through the ship, she calmly told everyone to get ready. The 8-year-old had inherited more than Just her father's eyes, she had his tactical mind. Minho Chun had spent the last hour before the attack making final adjustments to his sabotage efforts. The 9-year-old had been systematically damaging ship systems in ways that looked like innocent accidents. Emergency lights flickered, security cameras turned away from critical areas, and communication systems developed mysterious static. The Vorthek guards rushed to their battle stations as human forces breached the ship they expected to find their prisoners cowering in fear. Instead, they discovered that the children had somehow freed themselves from their energy cage and were in the process of securing their captors. Ho Li had put his mother's strategic lessons to good use. He had organized a complex distraction that drew the guards' attention away from the cell controls, while De Yoon accessed the manual override switches. Minho had identified the children had been ready to escape as soon as the rescue began. When Commander Park's forces finally reached the holding area, they found a scene that would become legendary throughout human space. The children were not hiding or crying. They were standing guard over their former captors with improvised weapons and expressions that showed they had inherited humanity's protective instincts. Chun Ji-song had used pieces of broken equipment to create makeshift clubs. She stood protectively in front of the younger children, ready to fight anyone who tried to harm them. The 11-year-old had discovered that she was braver than she ever imagined. The human soldiers were amazed by what they found. The children had not only freed themselves, but had also gathered valuable intelligence about Vorthek military capabilities, ship layouts, and command structures. They had turned their captivity into a reconnaissance mission. Young had memorized guard schedules, patrol routes, and security protocols. Her perfect memory had recorded every detail that could help the rescue operation. She immediately began sharing this information with the human commanders. The rescue operation moved faster than anyone had planned. The children were already secure and ready to evacuate. The human forces had detailed intelligence about the ship's layout and the location of all Vorthek personnel. The mission was proceeding flawlessly as the human teams moved through the ship. They encountered Vorthek soldiers who were completely demoralized. The aliens had never faced enemies who fought with such precision and determination. The humans seemed to know exactly where every defender was positioned. Vorthek Commander Thex Korvac tried to reach his command center to coordinate the defense, but found his path blocked by human soldiers who had anticipated his every move. The intelligence gathered by the children had given the rescue teams a complete picture of the ship's operations. Within 40 minutes of the first boarding, the entire rescue operation was complete. All 23 children were safe and secure aboard human ships. The Vorthek flagship was under human control, and the remaining enemy fleet was completely disabled. Not a single child had been harmed during the operation, but the Vorthek Empire's military capability in the region was completely eliminated. The human fleet had demonstrated something that sent shockwaves through every alien government. The rescue had been a masterpiece of military planning and execution. But what truly impressed the galactic observers was the role the children had played in their own rescue. They had not been passive victims. They had been active participants who contributed to their liberation. Captain Choi sent a message to the Galactic Council announcing the successful rescue of all human children. The message was brief and professional, but every alien who read it understood the implications. The humans had just redefined what was possible in military operations. The children were immediately taken to hospital ships where doctors examined them for injuries. The medical teams found that all 23 were in good health, both physically and emotionally. The resilience they had shown during captivity continued during their recovery. Dr. Hay Wan Li was amazed by the children's condition. She had expected to find traumatized victims who would need extensive counseling and care. Instead, she found confident, resourceful individuals who were eager to tell their families about everything they had learned as the human fleet prepared to return home. The alien council remained in emergency session, trying to understand what they had witnessed. The humans had demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything in their intelligence. Reports the precision of the attack, the coordination of the rescue, and the intelligence gathered by the children had shown that humans were not just another species to be catalogued. They were a people whose protective instincts could transform them into something beyond normal military doctrine. The Vorthik Empire had learned too late that threatening human children triggered responses that transcended politics, territory, and normal diplomatic considerations. The humans had shown mercy by limiting their retaliation to military targets, but the message was clear as the rescued children reunited with their families aboard the hospital ships. Every species in the galaxy understood a fundamental truth: humans might negotiate about many things, but the safety of their children was not negotiable. The consequences of threatening human young were absolute and final. 3 weeks after the rescue operation, the Galactic Council convened for what historians would later call the most important session in interstellar history. Representatives from every major species gathered in the Great Crystal Chamber to address a fundamental shift in galactic politics. Ambassador Hyen-Woo Kim stood before the assembled alien delegates with a gravity that commanded absolute attention. The rescue of the human children had lasted less than a week from kidnapping to resolution, but its implications would reshape how species interacted for generations to come. Council had spent weeks analyzing every aspect of the human response. Military experts had studied the fleet movements, tactical analysts had examined the rescue operation, and diplomatic scholars had tried to understand the unprecedented unity the humans had displayed. What they discovered changed everything they thought they knew about human civilization. The response had not been planned by government officials or military commanders. It had been a spontaneous reaction by an entire species whose protective instincts had overridden every other consideration. Council leader Zephes had lived for 3 centuries and witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. She had never seen anything like the human mobilization. When children were threatened, the humans had transformed from peaceful explorers into something far more dangerous. Ambassador Kim addressed the council with words that would echo through galactic history. He explained that the humans had shown restraint during the rescue operation. The complete elimination of Vorthik military forces had been a measured response, not the full extent of human capability. Alien representatives listened with growing unease as Kim described what would have happened if the children had been harmed. The humans, he said, had prepared contingency plans that involved the complete destruction of the Vorthik Empire, including all civilian populations and territories. What truly frightened the assembled delegates was Kim's final statement about human protective instincts. He told them that the galaxy had witnessed mercy, not vengeance. The children had been returned unharmed, so the humans had limited their response to military targets. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans were not just announcing their military capabilities, they were establishing a new doctrine that would govern all future interactions. No species could threaten human children without facing consequences that transcended normal warfare. Children themselves had become something of a phenomenon throughout the galaxy. Their behavior during captivity had impressed even the most militaristic alien species. The resourcefulness, courage, and tactical thinking they had displayed became case studies in military academies. Yoon Park's tactical coordination had shown that human children possessed innate strategic abilities that developed at a very young age. Her ability to organize intelligence gathering and coordinate escape plans demonstrated that humans were born with survival instincts that other species developed only through training. Minho Chun's technical sabotage had revealed that human children understood complex systems intuitively. His ability to disable ship functions while making it look accidental showed a level of engineering comprehension that amazed alien scientists. The galaxy had discovered that human children were not just smaller versions of adults. They were individuals capable of remarkable ingenuity, determination, and courage when circumstances demanded it. The protective instincts that drove human parents were matched by survival instincts in their offspring. the Council established what became known as the Human Doctrine, a formal recognition that certain species possessed protective instincts, so powerful that threatening their young would trigger responses. Beyond normal diplomatic and military considerations, humans were placed in a special category alongside only a handful of other species, whose parental bonds were considered inviolate under galactic law. Any act of aggression against human children would be treated as an act of war against all of humanity. The new classification came with specific protocols that all Council species were required to follow. Any conflict involving humans had to be carefully managed to ensure that civilian populations, especially children, remained completely protected from harm. Species that violated the human doctrine would face not just human retaliation, but sanctions from the entire Galactic Council. The other civilizations had realized that allowing anyone to threaten human children could destabilize the entire galactic community. For the humans, the incident marked their emergence as a true galactic superpower. No longer were they seen as newcomers to be tested or challenged. The unity they had displayed, the speed of their response, and the precision of their military action had earned them something more valuable than respect. They had earned the healthy fear that civilized beings have for those who will do absolutely anything to protect what they hold most sacred. The galaxy now understood that humans were not just another intelligent species to be studied and catalogued. Vorthak Empire became a cautionary tale told throughout known space. What remained of their civilization served as a reminder of what happened when species crossed lines that should never be crossed. Their military had been completely destroyed, their government had collapsed, and their territories had been occupied by Council peacekeeping forces. Former Vorthak Commander Thex Korvac was held in a Council prison where he spent his remaining years, warning other potential aggressors about the mistake he had made. He told anyone who would listen that humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of their weapons or their ships, but because of their love for their children. The rescued children returned to normal lives, but their experience had changed them. They had discovered courage and abilities they never knew they possessed. They had learned that even in the darkest situations, humans could find ways to survive and fight back. Dayun Park grew up to become a military strategist like her father, but she specialized in rescue operations and protective tactics. Her childhood experience had taught her that the most important battles were not fought for territory or resources, but for the people you loved. Taeho Lee followed his mother into military service, but focused on intelligence gathering and tactical analysis. His ability to coordinate complex operations under pressure had been proven when he was only 10 years old. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would influence interstellar relations for centuries to come. Humans could be peaceful partners, reasonable negotiators, and valuable allies, but threatening their children transformed them into something far more dangerous than any military force. As the human fleet returned to their home systems, every species in known space understood the new reality. The humans had announced their arrival as a major galactic power, not through conquest or intimidation, but through an act of love that demonstrated the lengths they would go to protect their young. The incident established humanity's place in the galactic community as a species that valued peace, but would wage total war to defend their children. It was a balance that every other civilization learned to respect because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. The children of Research Station Harmony 7 had been rescued, but their kidnapping had changed the galaxy forever. The Human Doctrine would protect not just human children, but serve as a reminder that some bonds are too sacred to be violated by anyone for any reason.